Well, joining us now is Father Willy Raymond. He's familiar to our Catholic TV viewers from previous appearances. I think 3 weeks ago we had you, right? Were you on 3 weeks ago? And he joins us today to share some updates during the anniversary year of Family Rosary. Thanks so much for being with us.
Sure, it's my pleasure to be here. And it's actually it's a confluence of a number of wonderful providential events. We're celebrating the 75th anniversary of the founding of Family Rosary by Father Peyton in 1942, that's when Notre Dame was 100 years old. Now it's 175 years old. And also, it's 25 years since he completed his life on this earth and moved into eternity. And then in May of this year, the Congregation for the Causes of Saints, the Theological Commission, voted 9-0 to move his case on to the cardinals, and they will vote soon, and they usually follow what the theologians tell them to do, Bishop. So, and we're hoping that he will be designated venerable in the next year.
He's referred to now as servant of God.
Servant of God.
Right, sure.
Yep.
Well, before we even get there, because there is a lot to talk about, and thankfully we do have some time, you both have something in common. Now, I know you haven't seen it yet, Spider-Man, but I know you're a fan of Spider-Man, and you're a fan of Spider-Man.
And I saw it. I saw the Homecoming.
And you liked it. I saw it. It's good.
I liked it.
You've seen Homecoming?
I did, yes.
But
yes.
On a scale of 1 to 10?
Oh, I would give it, I really loved Spider-Man 2. So I would give this one, if that got a 10, I would give this an 8. It's really worthy.
Tom Holland?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you've met someone involved with Spider-Man, haven't you?
Yes. You know, this was really interesting. About 5 years ago, a friend of mine who graduated from Stonehill, she went online and she found at auction a lunch that she could purchase with Stan Lee, the creator of Spider-Man and all those Marvel characters. And so she gave her husband Adam lunch with Stan Lee. He brought along his son Kevin, and then it was in Hollywood, so I was already there. He invited me to go along, and I said I'll be glad to join you. So we went to this club on Sunset Boulevard and met this gentleman who's a rock star at that time, 89 years old. I guess he's 93 or 94 now. And we had a wonderful conversation with him over 2 hours, including lunch. And he was talking about his wife, and I said, "Oh, how long have you been married?" And he said, "Oh, that's a great question." He said, "You know, when I was a young man, I was in New York, a graphic artist, and I used to draw a picture of what I thought was the most beautiful woman in the world." And he said, "I kept improving it every day, and I would go back to it and spend a few minutes with it." And he said, "One day, my best friend was looking over my shoulder, and he said, 'Oh, I know her.' And he said, 'I told you don't know her. She's not real. She's a figment of my imagination.' And he said, 'No, she's real. She is a hat model. And I know where she lives, too. I can give you her address.' So Stanley said, I got her address. I went and I rang the doorbell. And when the door opened, the most beautiful creature on God's earth was standing before me.
That's a great story.
And then she opened her mouth, and she spoke with a beautiful British accent, which I love. So he said, first words out of my mouth were, "I'm going to marry you." And he said that was 65 years ago.
And
so
they got married. That's great.
It was amazing. And he also said something very interesting. He said, he said, I'm Jewish. But he said, who was that Pope that was there just for like 30 days? John Paul I. And he said, you know, he had the most incredible smile. He said, he made me want to be Catholic.
Oh, that's nice.
He's a wonderful gentleman. Really enjoyed that lunch with him.
Well, you've served now as the president of Holy Cross Ministries for about 3 years, right? It's been 3 years. What has that role been like for you?
It's been an adventure. And it's I thought I was ensconced in Hollywood at Family Theater, you know, until God knows when. And 3 years ago, I was asked to move to Easton, the headquarters at the Peyton Center for Holy Cross Family Ministries, and I was pretty familiar with it because Family Theater is part of Holy Cross Family Ministries, founded by Father Peyton. And when I got here, it was clear to me that since Father Peyton's death 25 years ago, at that time 22 years. There had not been a full review of everything that we were doing and how effective it was or is, and are we addressing the 21st century family, all of that. So we decided to just look into that, put everything on the table that we're doing and review it, and we went into strategic planning, and that's lasted for about 2 years. At the same time, we're in 16, 17 countries outside the United States, so I was also trying to visit all of those countries to see what was going on there as well. So it's been an amazing, very busy time, and I think a grace-filled time for our staff and for me certainly to look at everything we're doing. And then at the same time, Father Peyton's cause is really beginning to move along, as I mentioned earlier.
I got to ask you, you're a great priest. Father Peyton is a great, great priest, and we admire him so much. Why is it, do you feel, that he should be named a saint?
It's interesting. I think in the end, there are, I think, at least 3 reasons. One is I think we're desperate right now for a saint for families.
Okay.
And he was being interviewed once by Dr. Conacher in Catholic Family Land, and Jerry said, "So you're the apostle of the Rosary?" And Father Peyton said, "No, not the apostle of the Rosary. I'm the apostle of the Family Rosary." And the family and its spiritual welfare was always the driving force behind everything he did. So that's one thing. The other is he was very single-minded, and he was wonderful to work with because he was so passionate. Also very difficult to work with because he was so passionate. Nothing stood in the way. And if there was a disagreement in the staff, he would go and pray, spend time with Mary, and then he would come back, and usually he and Mary were in full agreement. I could tell you all kinds of stories, but I won't get into that. And I think the final thing I would say is he really was a holy man when you met him. I don't know if you met him, Bishop.
Never met him. No, I never had that chance.
That would be the most striking aspect of any time with him, is that he is genuine, he's holy, he's a good man, and not perfect. And saints are not necessarily perfect. They're just people that have been given a grace by God to accomplish some really important task, and he did that. We had a provincial, Father Ribando, he and Father Peyton had some disagreements. And then 20 years after his service as provincial, Father Ribando was asked about Father Peyton. Is he really worthy of being considered for sainthood? And he said, I believe that Father Peyton was given a special grace by God to be an apostle of the family prayer and family rosary.
And he certainly was. And unfortunately, we're out of time.
HCFM.org, Holy Cross Family Ministries.org. That's the
or
address.
could you say familyrosary.org? That would be even better.
FamilyRosary.org, that's where people... Father, as always, great to have you here.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.